Coming up on Smart Tech Today, Matthew Casanelli and I have a lot to talk about this week. First, we talk gaming. It starts with Xbox announcing it's bringing a bunch of classic games to the cloud. Apple Arcade, of course, bringing a bunch of new games to the platform. And the Oculus Quest 2 continuing to just absolutely outsell previous versions of the Oculus headset. Plus, TikTok making videos more accessible to more folks, and Apple's own Find My network offering third-party Find My experiences, as they call it. Plus, we answer a question, a rather involved question this week about what the future of the smart home looks like and whether someone should upgrade their stuff or keep what they have, and, of course, our picks of the week. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of Smart Tech Today is brought to you by Command Line Heroes, a podcast that tells the epic true tales of developers, programmers, hackers, geeks, and open source rebels who are revolutionizing the technology landscape. Search for Command Line Heroes anywhere you listen to podcasts. Hello, and welcome to Smart Tech Today, where we explain the exciting, the dynamic, and the sometimes confusing subject that is the Internet of Things. I am one of your hosts, Micah Sargent.
And I am Matthew Casanelli. Hello, Micah. How are you doing today?
I am doing all right. It is a day in the year of 2021, and it is a day in which I still have a voice and can talk to you about internet stuff. And therefore, it is a good day.
Well, I've been loading up on caffeine all day, so that's been making my day good.
I was wondering why there was a slight vibration on your side of the podcast. It seemed as if perhaps you were moving at a frequency greater than, yeah, exactly. You can run away and come back without us even realizing you were gone, which is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and get started with the show today. Up first, it's Google I/O. Yes, Google I/O is going to be an event this year. Google has announced it's going to go from May 18th through the 20th. And as you might expect, it will be virtual.
Yeah, this is just, it's going to be interesting seeing what Google does this year, because last year it felt very sparse because they spread it out across a couple of events. And like, we did the smart home event, but it was just very weird not having that kind of stake in the ground to look back on like all of it in one place. So that'll be, I mean, it's Monday, May 18th through Wednesday, the 20th. So I guess I assume we'll just cover it afterwards. I'm not sure if we'll do a live thing yet, but we'll follow up with that. But yeah, just good news. And also Apple's WWDC is coming. Is it June 7th? I think it is.
Yes, I think so.
We're in the round of the end of the last cycle for both of these platforms. And especially with Apple's stuff, I feel like there's been a build up to that point. So I'm very interested to see. I mean, I, of course, always want to see shortcut stuff, but HomeKit, I think particularly, is going to be interesting seeing what's happening with all the HomePod mini changes and what we want to see with Apple TV. So it's kind of a good round out to that year of updates, which is nice.
Yeah. Microsoft Build will also be happening. I think it's July. It's later this year. I can't remember when it is. Maybe it's May. It's also in May. Yeah, Build is also in May. So yeah, all of the big folks will be doing their yearly developer conferences here pretty quick. All right, let's talk about gaming, especially cloud gaming, which is kind of continues to grow, continues to be an important and interesting platform. Microsoft has announced that it will be bringing classic Xbox games to its, what is that called? XCloud service. It's online streaming service, which works on PCs works on PCs and also works on iOS devices. So you'll be able to play Fallout New Vegas, Viva Pinata. Viva Pinata. No, I'm just kidding.
Did you ever play Banjo-Kazooie? That was my old school Nintendo game. I remember sinking hours into that. Yeah, nice.
I never did play
I think it's also
Kazooie.
XCloud is just the cloud gaming part. It's all part of Xbox Game Pass, which is like $15 a month. But this is the whole part of what I wanted to do this thread on gaming is because there's a whole wrap around story of this stuff not being available on iOS and sort of the competition between all of these services. So I think it's kind of an interesting point, particularly with the kind of consoles or smart TV home hub situations that people are buying. And just the ability to play games wherever you want in your home, I think is a really cool. I always think of that as smart home because that's just like the technology of the future that is now so available. Like, I think they just added Grand Theft Auto to this, actually, after this story. And I was like, even though, I mean, I will disclaimer that's an incredibly violent game and I do not condone the material inside, but it's also an amazing game. And just being able to play that on iPhone sounds so cool, and it's not currently available. So there's kind of a toss up in the air there. Like Microsoft has been making this service better and better all the time. And then it's like, oh, but by the way, just kind of doesn't work on iOS. So those users are kind of left out.
I think any opportunity to pick up whatever screen you have in front of you and start playing the game that you want, regardless of what it is that you have in front of you, that is brilliant. I think that really opens up the space quite a bit to where more folks are able to play games that they haven't been able to play in a long time because of not being able to get a new console, or in the case of this where it's kind of older games, where it may not have been feasible for Xbox to work to bring them to the consoles in a standard way to provide them in this space. And then thinking to the future where you have streaming, where you can have so much compute power kind of going toward a game to make it better. That's going to be pretty awesome that all of that can happen and all you're doing is just streaming the game to your phone on its own. So I think kind of a few things had to all kick in at once. It's sort of like they all were inching forward and they all were kind of watching all of these different spaces to really try and make this work. And one of those, of course, is 5G. Having that cellular service that's faster and able to handle more up and down. And we've got the administration that's working toward administration in the United States working toward a broadband initiative to bring internet to even more people. Because of the pandemic, there's been, lots to do with the infrastructure already, and companies working toward making that better in the short term, but having it affect the long term. And so all of these folks kind of looking at each other as they're slowly moving forward, and now they really can kind of take off and try to make this work in a big way, I think. So, again, it's very cool, the idea that you could just pick up any device and start playing a game that you want to play.
Yeah. And then the second story in this is kind of along that same line. Apple's approach for Apple Arcade is almost entirely different while being exactly the same. They want you to be able to play it on any device, but you install the app on all of those devices. And so Apple Arcade, in the same way with classic games, they just added like 30 new titles and a lot of old school iOS apps, especially ones that might not be in development anymore, or maybe the developer it was not really worth it because the game itself is slightly dead in the water, but they brought back classic titles with like 3s+. And so those you can now get on Apple Arcade for free as well. And it depends on the game, of course, whether or not it works on every platform, just since Apple's is so much more touch based, but there's still a lot of cool stuff there. Like Fruit Ninja awesome one are good examples. So now you can get
the Oregon Trail.
Nice. I didn't notice that one, but even like I think another one that I haven't really looked into much, but just sounded cool off the top is Fantasia from the creator of Final Fantasy. So they're trying to get more high level games into this platform and make it a lot more appealing, I think.
With Fantasia, they built real life dioramas and overlaid the gameplay onto those dioramas. So it is a really interesting mix of, digital gameplay and what feels like real life, because it is real life in the background. And yeah, I think it's really cool. Plus, Final Fantasy, huge and very popular. And so to have someone who was instrumental in Final Fantasy creating a game that's on Apple Arcade is, I think, a pretty nifty thing. And of course, there's, for folks who are, want the more standard kind of stuff, there's also NBA 2K12 Apple Arcade Edition, so you can play that one. I've downloaded and played a few of the games from some of the new ones. In fact, for folks who are listening to the show, you can tune into iOS Today tomorrow, where Rosemary and I will be talking about some of the new games. So yeah, I know all of these platforms are really I think a step forward in terms of gaming, and for folks who are super into gaming, but also folks who are not, incredibly into gaming. It all works.
I think also Apple's bundle there with Apple One is what some of those things start to make more sense over time.
Yeah,
as it's like,
sort of like
there's tons of games. Like News Plus stuff is now integrated into that, and I wouldn't pay for it separately. Like I definitely talked about that on this show, how I paid for it for months and never once used it. I mean, I still don't use it, but I think it'll be interesting to see, especially once those developer conferences come forward, how these are going to advance to the next level too. And I'll even admit for the next story, I'm not even super familiar with Google Play Pass, but they now have over 800 apps and games for Android too. So I think that's also worth mentioning, that all of these platforms, whether you're dedicated specifically to type cloud gaming or are more of a mobile platform area or some sort of blend between, there's a ton of offerings there, which is super cool. Especially in the pandemic, just having a range of games to play and test out without being super sure, and everybody makes money in the process too, I think. Well, I guess not the players, but everybody else who built them makes it money in the process is always good to see. So that's nice and also worth checking out.
Yeah. What's next on the list here?
The Oculus is, I think, just another interesting smart home type gaming gadget / exploration, even just a way to change your environment, literally, or I guess less literally. I don't know the word for digitally. But I used that a couple of times during the pandemic just to sort of get out of my space while still being there and being stuck inside. So, but the headline is that the Quest 2 has already sold every other version combined. So that's pretty impressive. Wow. And it does seem, it's a very low-key product. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing where, people don't live stream it the same way as games, and there's not like a Call of Duty type game that everybody talks about or something like that. So, but I think a lot of people have bought Oculuses and are enjoying it. So that's another interesting development this year that I don't know if it's mass market yet, but it's definitely past the bleeding edge. Maybe it's still early adopters in that sort of consumer adoption cycle, but there's tons of rumors for AR, VR things from Apple too. So it's all an interesting shift this year that I think kind of snuck in there, where it was like always coming. I thought about this with streaming services too, if it's like they always seemed inevitable and talked about for years and years, and now it's all here and we're all just using it all the time. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing to look back on. Like, I use Disney Plus a lot, or for example, so that stuff always, I just remember hearing about it on podcasts for the longest time, that it's like, oh, the streaming services changed. So now we're in that game zone as well.
The game zone. Welcome to the game zone. Yeah. I am curious to see how 2022 looks with different manufacturers putting out different types of AR and VR. And ultimately, if we have a situation where AR is one complete category that folks stick with and VR is one complete category that folks stick with, and maybe some have both, or if it ends up being kind of, we end up choosing one or the other and saying that's the technology that we want to stick with. So I wonder if, just if it's going to be kind of a versus, or if they both will get to exist. Because in their current states, it makes sense for both of them to exist. But could augmented reality get to a place where it's so good that VR feels kind of, you feel trapped or buried, and you don't feel like you can use it as much? It's more of a sit down kind of thing. And so AR takes off so much that developers who make games and developers who make apps for AR experiences end up focusing on that more. Or if it's going to be that AR will always be gimmicky, even in its best iterations. And so folks just go all in on VR because those make the best experiences. We'll see.
I saw an interesting tweet on that this morning. I think that was like, I mean, I have no idea particularly because this person is probably very biased in their profession and what they chose. But it was like, I think that people who are practicing VR now will be more prepared for what AR is going to be than people who are practicing AR mobile right now, because just the sort of the limitation of looking through your phone and that kind of conceptualization of what it could be versus the actual environment on your head sort of situation. I think it'll basically, I mean, XR is the term for like mixed reality, and I think it will sort of be the same thing. It's just how you're perceiving it, like holding up a phone versus wearing the thing, and how immersive it is. But you can kind of peek into both. So I don't know. We'll see. It's cool. I need to explore mine too more though. So I also have tons of AR apps, and they do seem like wholly different worlds. So that blend will be one of the biggest challenges.
Let's see. What is next on the list? It is time to talk about assistants. And this interesting article here, Ars Technica, says Microsoft's Cortana meets an untimely end on iOS and Android. I'm going to just make sure happening or done. Okay. Yeah, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure I had the proper definition of untimely. Happening too soon or sooner than normal, which is what I thought it meant. And therefore, I think that's an inaccurate headline. I feel like it is incredibly timely. It's entirely timely. This is Cortana going away makes sense, and the writing's been on the wall for a while. Occasionally, when Leo Laporte is on vacation, I will sub in for him on Windows Weekly. Coincidentally, this week also was one of those times. So yesterday I was on Windows Weekly. But I can remember the times that I have. A couple of times there was a Cortana story, and those folks who watch Windows, and by watch Windows, I mean watch what's going on with Microsoft and understand what's going on, have been talking about Cortana going away for a while. So again, I'm quibbling about the word and the headline, but I think that anybody who's been paying attention knows that it's not untimely. And in fact, in the article, the writer goes on to say, this is no surprise. So why is untimely in the headline? Anyway, it's going away. We knew it. And it's the way that Cortana exists now is sort of as a Clippy 2.0, where its whole point is to help with productivity tasks. You can kind of think of it as the way that Apple calls Siri, uses the name Siri for a lot of the different AI and machine learning stuff that happens on your iPhone. So when it in all your different iOS devices, where it pays attention to how often you open certain apps, or when you open apps in certain locations or in certain contexts, and then can give you suggestions. For example, when I put on my AirPods, it'll say, you usually open Audible whenever you put on your AirPods. Do you want to launch the Audible app? Those kinds of things. That's where Cortana is going on the Microsoft side, is to exist as a way to help folks with their productivity by kind of preemptively offering suggestions and helping them with different stuff there. So, yeah.
It's like interesting. I think specifically, I mean, we've even talked about this on this show, that this was dying, but I think it now officially, like, some of the functions won't even work anymore. So it is like final salute. Sunsetted into the sunset. Didn't think that one through. Yeah, but just an interesting note and kind of the end of that chapter.
Yeah. Continuing with the assistance conversation, the Google Assistant has had some more tweaks to make it better at knowing when you are trying to get in touch with it. So in this 9 to 5 Google article, they touch on how Google introduced a way for you to choose the sensitivity of these different devices so that it will more often or less often respond to you when it hears something that it thinks might be you saying, hey, and then G. They are improving upon this for also doing what's called federated learning. And so you can think of this as a way to over time, understand how people are saying, hey, G, and then use that to improve the technologies. So it says the company is using this so that raw data, you saying something close to hey G, is processed locally. Instead of audio being sent to the cloud, your device only sends a summary of the model changes to a Google server. This will help adjust Google Assistant's triggering logic. So it says near activations happen when the Hey G model detects audio or something you say that almost activates the Google Assistant. Google servers don't save your voice recordings from near activations, but your device does if federated learning is on. Your device may not indicate anything when it stores these recordings and may store up to 20 recordings per day. So essentially, you can help Google better activate correctly by offering up your sound recordings of when Hey G is improperly triggered or is, not what you actually intended to say. So it's a donate your data switch, essentially.
Yeah, and it's off by default too. So I think it almost seems like a precursor towards them doing something like this wider in the future, and maybe having it on by default. But right now is sort of a way to opt into that and just know that that's happening. I think it's interesting too, because it does seem like the kind of thing that they should roll out so that most of that actual voice information isn't being sent back and forth to servers, because that was the big controversy a couple of years ago, where I don't remember all of it. Definitely Apple was doing it, and I'm pretty sure Google as well, just having contractors listening to those recordings to determine whether or not they're accurate or not. So now having it happen locally on device, and then just those models are being updated, is going to be, that practice, I'm pretty sure, maybe we should look into that, of how, to what extent that has ended. But now it's definitely, they're using the technology instead of people, which is very funny. You would have thought they did that in the first place, but just the local on-device sort of processing, I think, is a highly valued feature. And so that's good to see this as an option now, especially like if that kind of privacy stuff is important to you, you can turn that on now. So definitely worth mentioning.
The next story, we had talked a little bit about some of the ALEXA Auto, ALEXA in the car functionality that essentially lets lets both individual users who go, maybe you buy a car, we'll call it the Waterloo car. And so you get in your Waterloo car and you go into your AliXA app and you download the Waterloo skill. And then while you're in your house, you could say, AliXA, start my Waterloo car. And so both car manufacturers and AliXA itself can kind of exist in the car in certain ways. But then there are also companies or car manufacturers who have even more, have deeper integration with AliXA. And one of those is a new Lamborghini, which is interesting. Right. The Lamborghini Huracan Evo, I guess is how you would say that. And it lets you control the vehicle itself. So you could say, AliXA, I am hot. And by saying that in the car, then it will make the air conditioning come on.
Yeah, and so heater, cool. Fan speed, temperature, seat heaters, I always say heat seaters on accident when we talk about the ones in our car. Not my Lamborghini though. I don't. Unfortunately, my Lambo doesn't have
in your Lambo.
Heaters. Yeah, so I've got the crummy one apparently. I feel like the fancy features are you can pull up your torque vectoring and traction control too. So in case that's a reason I wasn't going to get the Lambo, but now that it has this feature, I think that is worth it. All jokes aside, I think it's an interesting display of what it'll look like in the future, especially as part of it is that the car has I just said display to make it confusing, but they have a whole glass display that you can project this on. And so I think that's the difference, that compared to having more traditional knobs, if it goes more into this realm in the future, this might be an insight into what it could look like for other cars too. So yeah, hopefully some people buy up the Lambos.
Any opportunity to keep people's eyes on the road and off of everything else. Because see, a lot of these car manufacturers are loving to add touch screens to their systems. And the problem with touch screens, go ahead.
I was saying display. I couldn't think of the word touchscreen before.
Oh, yeah. That's such an issue. So I think this is great in that way. That's why I like CarPlay, is that you can do so much with Siri to control your car. And then there are some cars that, have built-in functionality that is, if the car is not in park or if it's not idling or I can't remember exactly what the rules are, then you aren't able to control some of that stuff. So just move as much of it to voice as you can is a good idea. Whether that needs, I don't know. Does having AliXA in your really expensive vehicle make it less cool? If that makes sense. Isn't part of the reason why people buy these?
These kind of people probably want to show that off. So I feel like that's a pretty good place to start, at least. It's just very futuristic and cool. I don't think I ever really thought about the fact that CarPlay or I'm just going to say Amazon Auto could control these kinds of features in your car. Especially there's always just the kind of thing of mixing the digital plus physical controls doesn't really make sense, because otherwise one is set to something that's different than the digital version. And so it sort of requires it on a whole car level. They can just account for that as well, but it would make sense to just be able to say to your assistant to do this stuff. I guess I just didn't really think about the integration with the cars and what that would take. So this is kind of the kind of thing where you're going to get this in 2025 maybe, or something like that. And that's even if you buy a car then. So this is the very cutting edge kind of stuff, but that is pretty cool. I guess I just had never even, it's one of those things that's I didn't feel like I needed it. I wasn't man, I wish I could use my voice control to do all this, but it makes a lot of sense too. So Sweet.
Yeah. Eventually, I think it'll all get there. So,
start saving your pennies.
Yes, let them compound interest. We'll take a quick break before we come back with more news. I want to tell you about Command Line Heroes. Command Line Heroes is a podcast that shares with you the epic true tales of developers, programmers, hackers, geeks, and open source rebels who have and still are revolutionizing the technology landscape. And folks, let the drum roll happen because Season 7 is out now. Season 7 of Command Line Heroes explores a pivotal year, 1995. It was the start of the dot-com boom, but a lot of things had to come together for the internet to succeed. Meet the internet class of 95. Long before you could hop on GoDaddy to grab a domain name, there was a woman you'd have to call. Elizabeth Jake Feinler was the keeper of all domains. Gosh, what a cool thing. Episode 1 of the season features a conversation with the woman herself, now in her 90s, about how she managed the internet and how her team needed to create the DNS. 1995 was the year that ISPs became the dominant gateway to the information superhighway. But how do we go from ARPANET all the way to that? It turns out none of it would have happened without a team of intrepid engineers at the University of Michigan and a network they built called the NSFNet. Web design took a while to become a career, but it got a big boost in 95. When the Batman Forever website launched to promote the movie, it showed people what web design was. This episode features pioneers like Jeffrey Zeldman, the godfather of web design, who recount the shift that forever changed the face of the web. 1995 was a pivot point, the moment when the internet went from academic curiosity to global phenomena. Command Line Heroes is hosted by developer and podcaster Saranyat Barak. And of course, all of us here who are talking about Command Line Heroes at Twit got to check out the Season 7 sneak preview. And you really will, it's kind of exciting, all of the stuff that happened in 95 and in the surrounding years that I guess I wasn't really aware of that it happened so soon. It feels like some of that stuff was so long ago, but really it happened just then. And so you get a real deep dive into kind of all of the stuff that came together to make this all possible. You can check out all the incredible stories from Season 7 today. All you do is search for Command Line Heroes anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's Command Line Heroes. Download it today. Our thanks to Command Line Heroes for their support. All right, let's talk about TikTok. Very quickly, this is another step forward for, I think, any application and any operating system to do, which is to offer auto captioning for video on TikTok. So not only is it good for those of us who like to watch without having to listen. I know that there are a number of people who I know personally who kind of get annoyed whenever it's like, wait, I have to actually hit play on the video or tap on the video to hear what it's saying. Why aren't there captions on this? But also it's great for, it's more inclusive so that people with low or no hearing are able to take part in TikTok, because on the face of it, TikTok is a very audio-based medium. Even though it's a video platform, when I think about some of the most popular TikToks that are there, a lot of it is audio-based. And so to have captions there to add to the experience, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, this is so fascinating, particularly because of the very specific parts about it. TikTok is very cool that the community itself realized that this was really important, and it became embedded in the platform that every single video is captioned because they knew. I mean, I think it's kind of like the collective good situation is they realized that they were like leaving their, for lack of a better word, like brothers and sisters out of it. And if they included this kind of stuff, it made it more inclusive for everybody. And I mean, maybe it's ultimately to the degree of like because you want to get more views, but also just because then it is open to everybody and it became a thing and now everybody does it. I think what's very interesting is that it was really difficult for creators because they're already making these on their phone. And so they have to go in and type out every single one of those captions for every single scene, and then also like time it and bring it out and in and things like that. And so I saw tons from TikTok creators being like, this is really difficult. Like, please help us out so that we can keep doing this, but without putting all the burden on them, even though I'm glad that it got to that degree, because I mean, we talked about this back when YouTube removed the ability for community captions to be submitted at all, which was absurd. And then they relied purely on their user-generated or their auto-generated stuff. And then also basically there's zero workflow for a creator to add captions and time it into the video without like sitting there after you're done. So if YouTube could take a lesson from TikTok's book and make this a lot easier, that would be wonderful, because it's very dumb, especially from Google, whose whole mission is to make the world, the internet, what is it? The world's information available on the internet. And the fact that stuff is just poorly captioned through their auto-generated tool is kind of absurd. And I love this too, that for the users, you can disable the captions as well. So part of it is that they're burned onto every single TikTok video. And so if you don't want those captions, you can't remove it. So this is a very, very holistic approach that I'm totally surprised isn't available on any other platform. It's like both the creator being able to add it, like TikTok or Twitter should do not auto captions, but auto descriptions for images in the same way, and let you confirm whether it's right or not, sort of situation. That's so much better than just putting it all on you and just being like, oh, we made it available, so now it's accessible. It's like, no, making it holistic for the creation and the consumption and for people who don't want it. I think this is a major win for TikTok, I think, and for the accessibility of the internet as a whole, because one of the biggest platforms out there is doing this really well. So this is so cool. I love this story, in case you can't tell. Like, I absolutely want to see this from YouTube. I want to see these tools built into Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere, because that stuff is still way too hard, and you could have it on every single thing. Like, I love the technological solution that it's easy to add and then hide. That is like really, really powerful, and I think a good example for the rest of the community.
Yeah.
2 thumbs up.
This next, exactly, 2 thumbs up. This next story is all you, Matthew. Tell me about, well, it's not literally all you, as it was Jason Snell who wrote this piece, but it is certainly something I've actually found myself reading through all of this because I do use Automator on the Mac relatively regularly. And then I also have a friend, Dan Sturm, who is an Automator genius, who's an automations genius, particularly with Keyboard Maestro. And so I do quite a few automations on the Mac. And if there was anywhere where I would use shortcuts automations, it would be the Mac. So this was my kind of piece. But tell us about this piece from Jason Snell.
The title is called "The Mac Needs Shortcuts." And I love these kind of pieces, especially because in my brain, this is just inevitable, like that the Mac needs shortcuts. And so I feel like it goes unsaid for some reason, but it's also absolutely true. And he lays out all of the reasons, particularly because it's really confusing on what you should try to learn. If you're going to go into Mac automation right now, it is spread across either Apple Script or their script editor type thing. And then a lot of people like you trigger that through Keyboard Maestro or Better Touch Tool or things like the Stream Deck. And just having a centralized system that is supported by Apple's apps in deep ways is another important part. And I think having that holistic thing across iOS and the Mac would be really powerful. I do think Apple would need to lead by example in the biggest way, because I think that's one of the problems with shortcuts and one of the problems with deep automation on the Mac is just that things that you think should be there aren't. And if Apple's apps fully adopt it, that's a signal to every other app in the ecosystem that this is the important thing going forward and you should adopt it. It's not like a nice to have. It's like the users will expect it. So I think this is going to be super powerful. I think a lot of the power of work type stuff through shortcuts can feel like it's best suited for the iPad just because of the size of the screen, and people aren't sitting there doing all of their work on their phone all day long. So bringing that capability onto the Mac would be absolutely amazing. I still don't know, just the whole touch-based building of it sounds odd on the Mac if you did have to use a pointer, but also I do that on the iPad all the time now too. So that's not too bad of a problem. I would love keyboard shortcut support that also brought it back onto the iPad, so that would be really cool. And just having that type of automation capability accessible to everyday people is going to be the biggest one of all, because having that on iPhone and iPad is also really amazing, but to a certain degree for most people, that's a whole other world than where they do all of their work all day long, which is on a more traditional computer. And so having that kind of power and scripting capability without learning to code is going to be really cool. So I'd love to see something like this. I shouldn't say is going to be really cool because I have no idea if they're going to be doing this, but I think it's worth calling for it now. I have, stuff takes a lot of work, and so if they were working on something like this, I have no idea if it could be built even since workflow was acquired, just because the technical level and hurdles that they're even experiencing with the iOS version still. So I'd love to see this, but I have no idea. So I'm not assuming it's coming this year, but I'd love to see it because that would be amazing and would really solidify their automation story going forward. So I agree. The Mac does need shortcuts.
Good. Next story is one that I am excited about because it is the first step in finally getting the thing that we have been talking about here and elsewhere for quite a while. It's something that Samsung has put out into the market now. It's what I'm talking about are AirTags, which is Apple's ability to track things sort of in augmented reality using the ultra-wideband chip in some of your devices, so that if my phone falls into the sofa, I know right where my phone is, I guess using my Apple Watch, which also has an ultra-wideband chip in it. And Apple has, without announcing anything new in that regard, has announced its Find My network, which is a network accessory program so that folks can track different devices, even those that are not part of, that are not Apple's own hardware. So I think there's a bike company that they've included it in theirs. There is a, Chipolo?
Yeah.
Which makes tags. And then, Belkin has some headphones that will have it. And so you'll basically be able to find these devices if they get lost using the Find My app on your iPhone. And the brilliant and wonderful and beautiful thing about this is because there's so many iPhones out there, this is one of the biggest networks that can be used to help you find your lost device, where some of the other third-party manufacturers that make these tracking tags, it requires other people having the app on their phone and maybe having the hardware as well to help build a network where they can use the Bluetooth on someone's phone or iPad or what have you to kind of find where those items are and then give the person information to that thing. With the iPhone, given that there's so many, it opens up the door even more for more folks to be able to find their items quicker and easier. And I think that I am very excited about this. I think this is one of my one of the things I'm most looking forward to from Apple as we see this rollout take place.
Yeah, especially, I mean, just to be clear, AirTags are a rumored product, and so there's no sort of official, even though there's, I'll say, a decent amount of leakage there, but this network we did know about coming, and I think seeing it expand to these other or making it a platform, I think is sort of odd to see before the actual, what we assume is a product is going to be released into it. But I think it also somewhat gives those device makers a chance. And I think it's a very, I don't know, I think there's a lot of like Apple meta stuff at the high level about, I almost thought this was an anti-competitive thing, where if they released AirTags and just made it exclusive to iPhone, companies like Tile are going to be really upset. I think they're already suing Apple for something, not allowing access to these types of things. So I thought this was an interesting, like you can't get mad at us anymore because we're making this available so you can be part of the program. And then Tile, especially, I mean, Tile has a really strong brand. And so if those worked with iPhone in this network, that'd be great. It'd be a healthy alternative to what might be the AirTags. So I think this is an interesting strategy on a high level thing for Apple to do while also being really good for the consumers. So I think this is super neat. And I'll admit, I don't think I knew that the Apple Watch Series 6 had a ultra wideband chip in it. I just Googled it, and it's only available on the Series 6. Maybe just because they didn't do anything with it this year, but that's very interesting because the whole tap your watch to something and it happens. And then, I mean, especially if you just don't have your phone on you, that's very cool. And I absolutely want a shortcuts automation where when I hit this tag or something like that, something happens, because that could be like local NFC tag type things, or like you just walk into a room and there's occupancy information. So this is very, very cool, and is like a big signal that that kind of stuff is coming even just as third-party products. So that's neat. I didn't buy the Apple Watch Series 6, which is the first Apple Watch that I didn't. And if I had known about this, and this, I guess if this was already available, I might have been more into that. So interesting.
LG has announced a new soundbar lineup shortly after announcing that it's no longer doing phones, which is, one thing. Yeah. It's got a soundbar that has AirPlay 2 support, so you'll be able to take advantage of that. And that will also mean better integration with the Apple TV if you have it to use as an external device. So, yeah, pretty good.
I sort of wanted to include this because wasn't it your idea to have the Apple TV be a soundbar? And I was like, well, here's one that works with AirPlay too, like I was saying. So
I think there are already some out there that do. It's just it's not full. It's not what I want. Okay, it's not quite the same. You can have Zoom calls on. In fact, I'm having this Zoom call right now on my Echo Show 10.
Are you serious? What? No, you're not. This is Skype. What?
This is Skype. Yeah, I'm lying. But Zoom, you can take your Zoom calls on the Echo Show 10, which is cool. It's also, Amazon has its own service that I didn't know existed until not too long ago. It's called Amazon Chime, and it's basically Zoom, but it's Amazon's Zoom. And so it, of course, also works for the Echo Show 10.
Yeah, I thought this was a cool, just like continuation of past episodes of the bringing video conferencing to these smart displays and just having that availability without taking up your main computer. And especially, this is the whole rotating display thing too. So this is basically built for that kind of product. I guess maybe, I don't know if you're walking around your house doing stuff during a Zoom meeting for work. It's a little more business oriented, but people use Zoom for everything now. So that's good. And you're not limited to Amazon Chime, which who uses that anyways. So having the real platforms that, they have Skype on there too. So yeah, you could take it from there if you'd like. We can record the whole next episode from an Echo Show 10.
I'd have to get it. First, I have to order an Echo Show 10, and then
it's like $400.
Figure out how to record the audio through a microphone. It would be a whole ordeal. IKEA and Sonos I think that they had a good go the first time around, so they're back at it again with those crusty crust lips. No, wait, that's a different thing. They're back at it again with another set of speakers, and I think this is good because, well, you know how I feel about Sonos, but how I feel about IKEA is that they have made some really interesting devices for the smart home, and so I'm glad that it's working out for them so that they keep making cool stuff for the smart home.
I agree. Especially I think they did a better job of making what is a cool, stylish speaker that you could choose to get, as opposed to the smart home manufacturers kind of making their own smart devices extra stylish, like all the baby blue colors and things like that. Like, I think IKEA and Sonos, I'm just going to say it. I think that's a better place for that kind of experimentation and for the target audience, I think, versus trying to make a Google Home look cool. It's like, let the cool speakers look cool and let these blend into their environments a little bit more. I think they're all doing a decent job, but I do think this is more stylish. And I do think Sonos is... I've been more, once they gutted the HomePod, I feel like I've been more interested in Sonos again, because it does actually seem like they're going to support
back and forth between two companies that are trying to hurt you. It's just like, oh, you're hurting me now, so I'm going to go back to the company that hurt me before but isn't currently hurting me. But then what happens if it hurts you again?
It's Apple's distortion reality field, though, got me, and then I just assumed that they were going to stick with it because they could afford to, and I think it's specifically Sonos has that focus.
I'm cutting through because we have to follow up on what you just said. So what you're saying is that because Apple discontinued the HomePod, what I'm understanding, I should say, and I'm saying this partially facetiously because I know that's not exactly what you're saying, so I want to break into it. But what it sounds like you're saying is Apple discontinued the HomePod, so the HomePods I have, or HomePod I have, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, it doesn't change the fact that you still have that device. And was it that you were holding out hope for a HomePod 2, and so now you look at the HomePod and you're like, you have no value, you worthless thing. You don't have a HomePod 2 functionality. Tell me why them discontinuing the HomePod suddenly makes the HomePod less valuable or less interesting in your home, less useful.
They don't currently sell a product that does home theater support, and so I think that's part of it. I don't think of Sonos as much about the home, like the whole home audio, but I think I have a Sonos One that works with AirPlay too, and I just set it up again, and it's weird because it doesn't have Siri, so that's throwing me off. But it sounds, in some ways, it's nice because it doesn't overwhelm me the way the HomePod can sometimes. But I think the home theater part specifically, HomePod barely was serving that goal and took too long to do what they were seemingly trying to do with the just default support. Like, they added that 6 months before they could discontinue the product, which is ridiculous. So those have always been smart speakers to me, not a home theater system. And Sonos does provide that and has been making it better. So I think that's interesting. But even what I was saying is they have the focus to make those products great and continue selling them forever. Apple doesn't have the same incentive system specifically with this, and they've demonstrated that they messed up with the HomePod strategy and are refocusing it now. So it's kind of like, I don't want to wait around for them to figure it out again. I'd rather get the thing that works I mean, I have a home theater system now, but I think that's why Sonos was always aspirational, and it seemed like Apple's stuff took that spot and would continue growing forward, and then they just stopped. And so I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. It's pretty simple, I guess. It's like they don't even sell it anymore. So, like, I don't know what... The HomePod Mini doesn't work with any sort of Apple TV support. So,
right.
I think they're just refocused. I think it's helpful because instead of... I mean, the thing that always happens with every Apple product is like, oh, the next one and what it could be, and you wait until that. And then, oh, no, there's another version, and you wait until that versus, like, the thing that's here now and you can use and utilize. So, and the Sonos One also is... I mean, I haven't done it compared to the HomePod Mini, but it's definitely a larger speaker, and so I assume it's going to be louder, and I'm pretty sure it's the same price, or maybe depending on if it's on sale. So I think it's an interesting... Yeah, it is just like I've made a reassessment now and just enjoying it too, and just trusting that they're going to continue investing in it because that's all they do. So yeah, I lost a little faith there, I guess. For good reason too. It's not just me. It's like they did it. So
yeah. Okay. That's fine. Tell me about the OnePlus Watch, so OnePlus announced a bunch of new stuff, including, I think it was a couple of new phones, three phones, and a OnePlus Watch, its take on the wearable smartwatch. And Mashable's review says, well, it isn't one size fits all, but here are our thoughts on the OnePlus Watch.
Yeah. It looks like it doesn't fit on their wrist, and so that's just a interesting observation. It's one of those big, chunky wristwatches, but I think it's an interesting alternative, and I think there's not a whole lot of very strong competition with Apple Watch, and OnePlus has been... I've seen a lot of attention towards it, at least amongst YouTubers. I have honestly zero idea how that translates to actual consumers. So if you are interested in this kind of thing, I'd love to know, because that it's always a bit of its own reality distortion field, because I'll say it as a YouTuber that you always want to cover all that stuff, and whether or not it actually makes sense for the people is sort of a point in the video, but it still gets that coverage. So it's always hard to tell, but especially if it just doesn't fit you, might not work for you. So good little review from Mashable to check out in the show notes.
There's also an interesting piece here from Gizmodo talking about a study done by North Carolina State University, where they are looking at muscle activity. And by muscle activity, we mean MUSSEL activity, the little creatures. And
yeah.
Yeah. And so by monitoring the muscle activity, they're wanting to see if they can use that to detect water pollutants, which is really fascinating. But in order to do that, they got to strap some wearables on these little muscles. It says... The way it works is 2 inertial measurement units, or IMUs, are attached to a muscle's top and bottom shells. Those IMUs contain both a magnetometer and an accelerometer, which is the same sensor, of course, in your smartphone or smartwatch that detects movement. Also, it turns out the sensors are pretty accurate. They're able to detect the angle of a muscle's shell opening with a margin of error of less than 1 degree. The reason why this article... or why this piece, I think, partially made it into the Gizmodo site is because the researcher described it as this: we've basically designed a custom Fitbit to track the activities of muscles. So yes, even Mussels and other bivalves wear Fitbits too.
Yeah, I thought it's interesting. I just didn't know that it's like they open their shells asynchronously, like opposite just one side when they eat. And so they were trying to test that if they close both the shells at the same time, there's something in the water, and so that it's trying to like hide from sort of situation. So just kind of fascinating. I like the accelerometer used for that type of situation. It's like a smart home for the, what is it, mollusks? Or I like to say
bivalves.
Also they're mussels, not muscles.
my muscles. I'm just going to have some, I forget how to use spinach. It's, yeah, I'm tired. Cool. Muscles for the Fitbit for the muscle. Let us go on to talk about our projects and questions for this week. Tell me what Rick has for us, Matthew.
Yes. So this is one of those. we were talking about Wink so much, but so he's been an Apple fan and supporter for years, but out of the loop. 5 years ago, I moved into a new home and I went with Wink. I really enjoyed it, but now companies are leaving them and I'm being charged even though their whole campaign was pay once for their hub, no subscription cost. I spent hundreds of dollars on it. So now I want to leave Wink. So if I go to HomeKit, well, I have to change in 5 years again. How can I migrate without breaking the bank? Where can I go to figure out what I can keep without replacing everything? So this is just unfortunate because that is always like one of the harsh things, and just having to completely change a setup. I think that the transition to HomeKit right now is also an interesting one because of Thread, and I think that's important to consider. I know your mic is all about it, so just waiting to jump in there. But I definitely think Hoobs is probably going to be, or just Homebridge in general, is going to be the solution to maybe at least just wait until more Thread stuff is out before you make a large change, and also have access to your current devices through HomeKit. So there are definitely some Wink packages. I don't actually, since I don't use Wink, it's a little hard to tell. But also, I guess I kind of, now that I think about it, it probably does assume that you're still paying for their service. That's maybe something that you'd have to check out on those pages. But just searching for Homebridge Wink plugin, I think is going to be the best way. And then Hoobs is an easy consumer friendly level tool to get, and it's like I think it's a little more expensive than it used to be, but you can
always download
that
it
would
for
also
free.
Sorry,
you can always just download Homebridge for free and install it on an SD card and use that for, as you said, for the consumer thing where it's just a buy one thing, plug it in situation. Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated, but if you've got a Raspberry Pi, or if you go to Amazon and order a Raspberry Pi, they typically come with an SD card, and then you can just go get Homebridge for free and install it on the SD card, and then use it with that Raspberry Pi.
I think it's also just specifically because their rig is going or is on Apple and has the devices. This will work regardless of what you go to, even if it wasn't necessarily. I mean, I guess it does sort of imply the HomeKit integration, but any sort of Google or Alexa, I could never say that fast. You've got it down, and I stumble over it. Those integrations will also be served through Hoobs as well, or Homebridge as well. So I think that can be a sort of a bridge for now, and then also just a platform to experiment with more and do over time on top of it.
Yeah. So, Rick, one of the things with Wink is that the Wink Hub is just a device that has the different radios inside, or different methods to communicate using Z-Wave, Zigbee, and I think SmartThings, which is like a custom flavor of one of those two, Z-Wave or Zigbee. And so when I think the magic that you are kind of trying to replicate, where Wink did a good job of making it so that you could control all of those Zigbee and Z-Wave devices with just the Wink Hub itself and that app, or automatically using the Wink Hub. that part will be hard to replicate precisely. But if you look to each of your devices in your home and you determine what it's using as the communication protocol, there are other ways to control those things, particularly with Zigbee, because many modern smart speakers include a Zigbee radio inside so that you can use those as the hub to control your devices. Amazon makes several Echoes that have Zigbee built into them. And of course, yes, the future is Thread, but some of those too might be Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and you were just using the Wink thing as your hub because it had that functionality built in. But it doesn't mean that you suddenly have to get rid of all of those devices. Wink just brought all of those things together into one package, but those individual devices should be able to still be controlled by something else. It's just a matter of figuring out what protocol they're using and then figuring out the tool that you need to control, to communicate using that protocol. As far as asking, will you have to change in 5 years again? I don't think any of us can make that guarantee whatsoever. I can't even say that using HomeKit means that in 5 years you will be able to use that. As far as I know, the sun might fall out of orbit and burn the entire Earth away and all of us with it, and therefore Apple doesn't exist as a company anymore, and so you won't be able to use it with HomeKit. Like I don't think anybody can make that guarantee that HomeKit's going to work in 5 years. We're hopeful that it does, and as far as we know, it will be. But I don't know. Apple gets hit with 300 lawsuits that bankrupt it, and we don't have HomeKit anymore. So I'm not comfortable answering that part of it. The only thing that I can say is, and I think that too, that's always a risk that you take, is that 5 years could bring new protocols, new technologies that work even better than the ones that are available now. And as companies continue to try to improve, then they move away from older protocols. And so it doesn't just have to be doom and gloom that brings 5 years to an end. It could also be a positive thing that brings 5 years to an end. So as far as that goes, I don't have an answer for you. But in terms of migration without breaking the bank, I think that your best bet is to gather a list of the brands of the devices that you have in your house, and from there go to those individual websites of those companies and find the product that you have, and then look at the tech specs for that product. And then find what protocol it's using to communicate. It should say Zigbee, Z-Wave, Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz, et cetera, Bluetooth LE. And then once you have that, then you can start to figure out what modern device you can use to control those. Because if I go to Amazon right now, I can type in Zigbee hub, and there are loads of different Zigbee hubs, including, of course, the new Echoes. I can also type in Z-Wave hub and find something called Hubitat, for example. The Samsung SmartThings, which supports Z-Wave, and some other routers or even little USB things that you stick into the wall. Or excuse me, that you stick into the wall, that you stick into your computer to control them. So there are ways to control these devices. You just have to figure out what protocols they're using first. So, Rick, do feel free to get back to us if you want to give us a list of here are the devices that I have, here are the protocols. That could help us kind of help you figure out where you should go next with those devices, or if you do need to replace them, kind of how to replace them without, as you said, breaking the bank. But 5 years, unfortunately, is a lot of time in the smart home world right now, and I think it will be for a while before we get to any sort of settling if, again, we're not all burned away by the sun by then.
I do think chip is going to be a point where we'd know a little bit more and be able to make a better recommendation. So that's why I think sort of having something to hold you over until then might be a solution just for affordability's sake, and then deepening that integration over time. If they are like Wink products itself, not just ones that integrate it with it, that might not work as well with the Zigbee thing. I don't know specifically with theirs if they only work with the Wing Hub. So that might be
we could do some research on that as well, Rick, if you get back to us. So yeah, it starts with a list of products, and happy to help you out with that. So you can just reply to the email that you sent us to let us know what you have, and then we can go from there. Because Matthew, you're also correct that with the introduction of chip, Thread is only one possible method to use. Wi-Fi itself can be a protocol or a communications method that works with chip, or that is like blessed by chip. And so any of these are reasonable ways to work these out in the future. And so it's quite possible that getting rid of something right now, particularly if there's Zigbee, because Zigbee kind of is buddy with Thread and chip and all that kind of stuff, and is sort of an evolution of that. So not necessarily a reason to get rid of what you have now, because it could be that in 2-3 years, all of that stuff will just work as part of a sort of chip-sanctioned smart home because of the Zigbee communication protocol that it uses. So yeah, need some more info to really have an answer there. Up next, we have another question. This time, it is one, Matthew, for you to answer. Get real close, tap your phone against this question, and give us an answer.
So this one is from Ash, and I actually saw this come through on Twitter, and I was just happened to be creeping and thinking about NFC tags at the time, but they were asking, does anyone have NFC tag recommendations? And I sent an article that I had said I had published on my website a couple years ago, saying I use this set. I ordered a couple, and I have cards, little keychains, and just the regular stickers, but their follow-up was, do you use NFC 213 or 215? And I was like, I did not think about that at all when I originally looked at these. I thought some of it was just the difference between versions for larger actual products, but NFC or NTAG 213, as sort of the 213 symbol, is slightly more powerful. And so I ordered a set, and it does seem like they work a little bit better with my phone than the original set that I had that were 215. And so I think it's like like a half an inch difference maybe, but the point that Micah was saying about having to get up really close and tap your phone to the tag, and also like on the top left corner of it, is a little bit easier with these tags. So it can kind of, it's still very NFC near field communication, but it works a little bit smoother. And so I think these are worth checking out. I think they're a little bit more expensive, but also still, I'll transition this into my pick of the week, is the ones that I got from Amazon. The 12 pieces NTAG 213 NFC stickers, NFC tags, $519 for only 12 of them. I did get like 30 in other packs, so it is a little bit more expensive, but compared to almost every single smart home thing, these are extremely cheap. So I think it's worth getting another set if you have any that are maybe worn out, or you always have trouble activating because they're in a particular place in your phone, just doesn't quite read it. So
wait, the smaller number is better, or the bigger number is better?
The smaller number is better. I think, I didn't test 216, but I think 215, I just didn't realize was like a blend between the two. And so they're just cheaper. Oh. And so I think it's more like, if you're making 10,000 of these, it's like that scale adds up a lot. But for people who are just buying a handful, it's not that big of a difference. But I think it's just a little bit better. I do think the ultra wideband stuff is what I want to replace these with, because then it would actually just be a full program thing and not just like an inch and a half or less than 1 inch total distance that you need to get close to. So, but this is still a really cool function. It makes your device interact with the real world, and it works really well for smart home controls specifically because you can walk into a room, tap your phone to the corner, and it turns on all the lights. So that kind of stuff is really awesome to do with shortcuts. What is your pick of the week?
My pick of the week, very excited about this. It is an app made by the developer who makes Home Pass, Home Cam, and Scene. Is it what's I can't remember what the other one is.
You've got Home Scan, Home Pass, Home Cam, Home Paper, Home Run for Apple Watch, which is a cool way to do scenes on your complications on your watch. It's got like developer tools too.
Yeah, that was the Home Run that I was trying to remember. But the one that I am talking about is his newest app, and it's called Home Paper. And the way this works is it's an app for your home app. So if you can switch back to me here. In your home app, you have these backgrounds that you can set up. So you can see here, I've got, actually it's a photo that I took of the thing that's behind me all the time in my office and behind me in the camera, because that is something that I see when I first walk into my office. And so it goes with the office. I've also got, I didn't set it up with this one, but I have a photo of my dogs set as the wallpaper for my home. Now, Apple includes some options that you can use that are these sort of blurred, cloudy background type things, but they're not as fun as custom backgrounds. And so Home Paper lets you create custom backgrounds. So here I've got that's weird. I wonder why that's out of... It's cropped a little bit. Anyway, here I've got, this is the one that's kind of built in. But on the left side, you've got tools to take a photo if you want to, choose from your photo library if you want to, and then the button below lets you change the gradient. So the developers included a bunch of created gradients that are kind of nice. And so I could choose, let's go with this really bright one here. And so this goes from like a blue to gray. Then these two dots in the middle let you select the colors that you want for the gradient. So I can tap the top one, and I've got different ways to change it. So I can do sliders, I can do grid, or I can do spectrum. If I go over to sliders here, then I can add some color and start to make an adjustment there. And go back, and then the little arrows in between switch the gradient. Do I want it to be in the top left or from the bottom? Then I can go in and I could make adjustments to the opacity to kind of bring in more of the photo that I use. And then afterwards, you tap the save button, and it lets you export this just as a photo that you can then use in the background of your home app. Now, on the iPad, when you save the photo, it just saves this one. It's a large square. But on the iPhone, there's a setting to also let you export. So it exports a version for your iPhone, but it'll also let you export at the same time a version for the iPad. So that way, if you create them on your phone, then you can go to your iPad afterward and find an iPad version right there in your Photos library and be able to set it from there. What's super cool, on top of being able to take a photo and choose a photo from your photo library, Aaron Pierce, the developer of the app, just got approval from Unsplash, which is a site that I love to use. You can get photos that are available for free that people post, and they're beautiful photos, stock photography and scenic photography and photography that's great for wallpapers. And so he just got access to the API, so he's rolling out an update, probably likely to hit sometime early next week, if not sooner, that will also let you make use of Unsplash's library. So instead of using your own personal photos or taking a photo, you could type in, for kitchen, for example, you could type in like knives or, I don't know, cantaloupe or something that you would have in the kitchen, and then have that show up as the photo for the background here. And they're made so that they look good in the home app. So it's purposely done that in the top right corner of the wallpaper is where that photo kind of bleeds in, but everything else is nice and just one solid color or a nice gradient, so that all of the controls are happening. There's no sort of weird struggle to read what it actually says. So this is a clever little utility. It's free to download, and then that lets you export one wallpaper so that you can check it out. To export more, you pay 99 cents. That's it. 99 cents, and you've got unlimited exports. It basically unlocks the app. And at that point, you are free to create as many wallpapers as you want for the home app. I love this, too, because I used to meticulously go in every time and I had created these photos. I probably used Photoshop to make sure that they were perfect, and had one set up for each room. And then every time I would start, because they don't seem to sync. And so it's kind of like, it's your own personal choice for the wallpapers. So anytime I would strike up a new device, sometimes there would be issues there where it just was not working. And so I stopped. I gave, as one does, I gave up on making custom wallpapers. And then also I'd have to scroll way back to try and find them too. So I stopped doing that. But with this, I can quickly create new ones as often as I want to. And they're right there and available for me. So, it's just yet another awesome HomeKit app from the developer who makes so many awesome HomeKit utilities. And so bravo to Aaron Pierce for this one and for making some very cool apps that I take advantage of almost every day.
He almost didn't release this too. He was like tweeting. He's like, "This might be for me only," and I was like, "I want this," like, because I had custom backgrounds on my iPad and never synced them over, and it just looks like it should be the built-in feature where like you throw a photo in the background and then the home app screen sort of fades into that, as opposed to when you throw a photo behind it, it can kind of be really busy also. So this was great. And he makes awesome utilities. So he's got a little bundle that is also worth checking out that you can just get all of these at
Please
one
support
time,
him because I'm trying to convince him to build an app that for the Apple TV that will let me control my home from the Apple TV. And he doesn't want to because there aren't a lot of people out there who want that. No, because
I feel like Apple would do that also.
They just want to use their voice on the Apple TV to control stuff, and which makes sense. But I just really want an app. So anyway, just support his work because it is great work, and I'd like to see it continue to be, to come out. So home paper. Folks, that brings us to the end of another episode of Smart Tech Today. If you have questions, feedback, thoughts, concerns, poems, and limericks that you want to send us, send those to stt@twit.tv. We keep it simple there. Thanks to those of you who tuned in live today. You can join us in the chat room at irc.twit.tv or head to twit.tv/live every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, which is 1:30 p.m. Pacific, where we are recording the show live. But the best way to get the show is by subscribing to the show. You do that by going to twit.tv/STT, where you can subscribe to the show in both audio and video formats across all the different places we exist online. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. Matthew Casanelli, if folks want to follow you online, where can they go to do that?
At MatthewCasanelli.com/Siri Shortcuts is where I've got my whole shortcuts collection. And this week for members, I did a photography one, which does golden hour type things and Lightroom, and also saving your photos to albums and sort of deleting photos that you didn't utilize and things like that. So that's one. That one's fun. What about you?
CASSINELLI.
Yes.
You can find me online at Micah Sargent on pretty much well, any social media network I can find, I try to get that Micah Sargent. Or you can head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I exist most often, and also photos of my dogs. So if you want to see my chihuahuas, strangely, I don't have photos of the coffee that I drink. I'm realizing now that that's kind of an oversight on my part. Maybe I'll have to set up some sort of IFTTT automation for that. But anyway, folks, that's the end. Slap a wallpaper on your smart assistant. Goodbye.
Got my NFC on the Mac. Oh, that sounded terrible. Maybe we should cut that.
No, I kind of liked it. It was great.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and I want to tell you about my show, Hands on Photography, here on Twit TV. Each and every week, Thursday that is, I like to sit down and share with you the best tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer. And it's not always about Photoshop. It's not always about just having the biggest and baddest and bestest camera. It can be the simplest of things, like leave your eye open when you're looking through the viewfinder. All of these simple tips can really help step your photography game up. So subscribe to the show today. That's twit.tv/hop. And I look forward to talking to you soon.